Okay, call the Public Works and Safety Committee to order. It's the 17th of June, 2019. Let's all stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call.
Alderman Borbin?
Here.
Alderman Madden?
Here.
Alderman Hamel?
Here.
Scott Kreger?
Here.
All right.
Statement of public notice.
Meeting was noticed on Wednesday, June 12th.
Approval of the minutes for the May 20th meeting.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll go on to the status of projects. Scott?
Sure. Waukesha Water, again, no updates from our last meeting. We're just waiting for them to give the 90% plans, and then we can do our review of the project. Bay Lane reconstruction. We are full-blown into this thing. So this weekend, they finally closed the entire road. The school is out for the summer, thankfully. We are hoping for some really good dry weather. The south part of the project, basically from Bridgeport down to Woods Road, has been really going along. But now that we're able to close the entire road, we are started milling off the entire project, start doing saw cuts of all the driveways, moving forward with the storm sewer design, construction, and yeah, the project's just really going. So hopefully with the school out, that's the biggest thing. We just got to get the school out. Again, supposed to be 90% kind of done by September. October will be 100% done. Hoping with some good weather, we can really kind of just push forward with this, and kind of with like the less amount of traffic on the road, we can get this thing wrapped up. So we handle calls probably on a daily basis from that project. So in one way or in one manner or another. So, yeah.
And Hillendale?
Hillendale, no updates from last meeting. We got about 2 more comments to get back to the FOLF, their design consultant, and then they can move forward with the 60% plans, and we can do a public information meeting probably in July or August this year.
Okay. Unfinished business. We want to talk about the internal water service at Will Rose. What can you give us any kind of update on?
Sure. Here's a couple of updates on it. I want to give you just kind of 2 of them. One, Bill reached out to PSC. They sent a letter saying that yes, they can use a third party to basically run the meters. So they would buy the water from us in one way, and then they'll use a third party to monitor it. I included that in there, so they did get approval for that. I also threw in kind of like when Scott said, if you variance and ordinance, how would this affect other things? So I had to look at our WCA charge, which is our water capacity assessment. So our ordinance is based off of a water capacity, or water capacity assessment is based off this ordinance. So for example, if we would give a variance for this ordinance, the water capacity assessment, to kind of give you an example, and if it's kind of gives you a rough kind of like talk around it. I think I attached it in there for an Excel. So if you had a true like kind of 50 unit, our water capacity assessment for that would be about $82,000, 83,000 kind of roughly. If you would do it with a 1-inch line for 3-inch, it would go down to 45,000. So what you're kind of looking at is, and I don't think it's any fault of Bill's because I talked to him, but one of the effects of it is by changing that and allowing this, you affect our WCA. And the other thing is you affect quarterly charges. So, for example, a quarterly charge of $1,823 would go down to $306. So what you're doing is by allowing this variance from our ordinance, you really kind of affect our WCA. And I don't think that was the intention of Bill. I talked to him about it, and no one's intention. It's just one of the side effects of this. So what that would mean is Parkland Town Center, to give you an idea, has a 30-unit building that just came online. their WCA charge would be higher than this building with 51 units if you would let this go through a variance. The only other thing too is Jeff, our attorney, said his recommendation always is never to give a variance for ordinance. I think it's a standard kind of talk that he said. The other thing too is the only thing that you guys can do is you recommend to council whether or not you want to recommend a variance of this ordinance, and then it's decided at council, just to kind of give you an idea of what you are allowed to do, and then it would be decided on next Tuesday. But this is one of the side effects of doing this variance. And I think everyone in this room is like, well, it kind of looks like you're skirting the WCA charge, just to let you know, and it's one of the things that is kind of a side effect of it. So if Bill's here, I mean, and Bill and I have talked about this a little bit, but, so, is it on?
No, slide it forward.
Mm-hmm.
Push the button up.
Yep, it's on.
No, that was never the spirit or intent. Was certainly not to escape the WCAs and nor the quarterly billing. We were just trying to figure out a way to do this, and frankly, as you recall at the last meeting, one of the things that we were asked to do was to investigate other communities and where this kind of practice occurred. And it occurs throughout the metro area. The city of Milwaukee allows it, Oak Creek allows it, Franklin allows it, McWanago allows it as sub-metering. And what I had gone back to Scott with is, and he didn't like this, was the potential to put the city meters, not the sub-meters, but the city meters in the individual units. And, and then it would be, we wouldn't have to deal with the 3-inch meter, we wouldn't have to deal with reduced quarterly charges, we wouldn't have to deal with the WCAs, there'd just be a level playing field. However, not to speak for the city, but your concern was monitoring and how that would play out should there be a need for some service. We will have a full-time building manager that would allow that service to occur. So there's a thought on how to kind of meet this in the middle so that the city doesn't get hurt, so that we can move through this whole process. And that, of course, would require a variance as well, because I believe that your ordinance reads that it has to be within one heated area, which wasn't exactly the way the building was designed.
Yeah, so what we were talking about when Gloria came in, we were looking at ideas, spitballing ideas. So why we don't want them in individual apartments is to access them. You have to call them up, you have to do everything. Parkland Town Center, it's in a separate building. You talk to the property manager, you open up the door. There's all meters in one room. Easy can access all of them. You don't have to go into anyone's individual apartments or anything like that. We told Gloria one of the suggestions is, you guys have an underground parking. Just put them in your underground parking. You don't need a separate, it's heated, which is good. You don't need to build a separate kind of wall in, because they can't fit them in the mechanical unit. We also said too, all you have to do is protect them. So if put a couple bollards up, which is pretty cheap, so you don't have no one run into them, is the best way to put it. And the fact that our folks can access it. So you could come down to the basement in an underground parking. They're all up against the wall. A couple bollards in there just to make sure no one runs into them, and just don't put any junk in front of them. That was one of the suggestions we suggested to Gloria without building another kind of structure. And at the same time, we don't think you don't need to eliminate a parking stalls, because you could put them right against the wall. But those were kind of our suggestions as well. Again, we're not against working with them. It's just the one of putting them individually into an apartment, it's just not favorable. It does not work well. It is something that we don't recommend, and that's why we suggested the underground parking to do it. So,
when I read through your staff recommendation, at least on this version, or I'm sorry, it's not a staff recommendation. It's
You're going to
this
have to use the
page.
microphone a little
Yeah.
more.
It's this page that was highlighted in yellow.
Yeah.
It made reference to chapter 355-3 as amended. Is there another portion of that was not included here?
No, why it says that's the section that's amended in 1996. So if you look at it, so that portion, that multi-unit metering, we double checked it.
It's just that it doesn't say that it has to be in one room.
It doesn't say in a room. We prefer to be in a room. It's not an ordinance of it, but to go in everyone's individual apartment, it's not what we recommend. That's why we told Parkland Town Center to put it in a separate place, because we don't want to access everyone's individual apartment in there. When we have, in the past, there are certain ones that has had this. And then know what happens? That meter is then blocked, or it's under a stairwell, or it's not easy to access, and we don't want to work with every individual person in an apartment. That's why we did it with Parkland Town Center, and we're just being consistent. It's in a separate room. It just makes it easy for us to access it and go through it.
So I really want to be respectful about this.
It is a preference for the city of Muskego.
This is not a requirement. This is not a requirement by ordinance.
The ordinance does not say that you have to put the meter in a room.
It's a preference.
Correct. It is a preference of it that we like doing it so we don't have to access it. And we're being consistent because we just did this with Parkland Town Center. And that's all we're doing.
Well, at the last meeting, it was unlawful to do it, according to the PSC, we're going to create a utility. This is a preference, it's not an ordinance. I guess if it's at all possible, I'd like you to consider doing it with your meters in each unit.
Sure.
Aren't there electronic meters that can be read just by walking down the hallway?
We read them all that. That's not the problem. It's just if you have to replace them. And if there's a problem with them. We read them. Reading them is not the problem. It's going in there every year. The lifespan's only 20 years. The other thing, too, is let's say something happens. We can go into one room and kind of change, do things without being inconvenient to the apartment person of it. It's not about reading them. It's about access and the ease of it do it. There is some, I would have to say, behind Piggly Wiggly, from my understanding, there are some individual meters that are put in the actual homes. They're under stairwells. They're behind people have put other things up. They're not easy to access it. So we have a struggle kind of getting in and then calling up the person and saying, hey, we need to get in here. We need to switch out this meter. Now, what I like going back to this whole thing about the original rule and just the whole thing of why a variance was done. We have design standards. This design standards has been set for forever. The plumber chose not to look at our design standard, and now we're asking a variance from the last hour to do this.
But it's not a variance.
But, okay, now you're switching the things. Your thing is no longer a variance. Now you're agreeing to individually plumb everything. You want to put the meters in everyone's room. So you're not asking for a variance for 1 inch 3 meters. You're asking now that you're going to do it like we want, but you just want the meters in everyone's.
But
do you understand what I'm saying now? You're not asking for the variance.
We're not asking for a variance because it's not unlawful by the terms of your ordinance. It's a preference. And so I don't.
But the variance still is this. You're asking for a 3-inch meter in, right?
No.
No, see, now you're no longer asking for a variance, right? Because that's just for everyone's understanding.
That's what I said, is that we just do away with the 3-inch meter, do the individual meters distributed throughout 51
But you're asking for now that you're now asking for us to put the meters in each room, but no variance. Just, I want to make sure everyone's clear about this now. So now we're asking for something from our preference where we would say, and it's hard to say because You know how many times we review plans and they say, well, why would you want the water meter here and why would you want a water main here? It's because certain things we like preferences so we can access it. You know, we want a water main on a set of plans so far away from storm sewer, one, for protection, two, we want to make sure that we have enough access to do it. If we lay a water main down and it's too close to the right of way, we usually ask for an easement so that when we access that and do a construction, we're able to access it. So now this is a design preference. Yeah, we have the design preference and this is what we prefer. But just to make sure everyone's clear, now we're not talking about a variance, we're just talking about a design preference.
Wouldn't that be up to plan?
Well, it's up to us. It's kind of like, well, where we want to like to access it. We prefer to access it in one room, not in everyone's individual apartments.
Gotcha.
Because we have that, I mean.
The ordinance was established, it's got here for several reasons. The water can be shut off to an individual apartment and not affect all the residents in the building. Would Bill's plan accomplish that?
It would, I'm just letting you know, but it's no longer a talk about ordinance. Now we're talking about a design standard.
We're right. I'm just trying to see if these plans actually fulfill the ordinance, what we wrote the ordinance for.
Well, the ordinance, it's written for that, but also one of our preferences is to put them in a room. It just for access, and all we're doing is trying to be consistent with what we did for Parkland Town Center. And where we've had problems is when they're in an individual house or individual apartment going back and forth to dealing with this. And that's one of our rules for access in it. It makes it more difficult on city staff to do this.
So if a meter went down, and hypothetically speaking, the person that lives in that apartment is a snowbird, and they're gone for the winter, and that has to get fixed, and we can't get in there.
Well, they have to give us permission to get in there, and we can't locate that person. That's why if it's in a room, and we can do all the work in one location for an apartment.
What's the effect on the city if that meter doesn't get fixed for 3 months? I'm just curious. I mean, it could be that it's not being read.
It could not be read for quarterly charges.
A maximum amount because we don't know what was
There could be a ton of different items that could happen. Maybe the meter's reading wrong. Why is the meter doing it? Maybe there's a leak, which hopefully there's not. But there could be a lot of things that we go in there and do it.
It's for everybody's protection, the cities as well as the apartment dweller.
It also does make it easy for the city staff to change out these meters. It does. Saving time and going in one place and trying to contact this individual apartment person, it makes it very difficult for us. It's one of our preference, and it's no different. You know what? It's probably no different than another community might have the same preference, or they might have a different preference. And that's fine. It's just one of our preferences. But now we're talking about a design preference, not an ordinance. I just want to make sure that everyone's clear about this. We're no longer deferring from the ordinance because they're going to do what we ask. What they're now asking us is, and I don't know, is we have a set of, we say that we like it in a room or a garage in a heated area. You're now saying, you know, that you want it in the individual apartments. So that's what's on the table. I just want to let you know.
So Bill, would it not be easier to put them in the garage than in each? I'm just thinking logically. If you spread them out throughout a whole building, or you put them all in one place in the garage.
It's 8,000 feet of additional pipe.
To put them in one place instead of spreading them out through the building?
No.
Really? Wow.
It's 1.5 miles of additional copper pipe. And so of course it's about cost.
Well, if these were all in the individual apartments, how would they be read?
Everything is read electronically.
Yeah.
A point that I would make is that one very likely thing that occurred back in 1996, whenever a lot of this came to be, is that you had your meter reader, and you would go in and read all of the individual meters. And so, and you know what, Scott, I agree with you. It certainly is understandable that you want to be able to go through replacement, repair, inspection, all the rest of that in one place rather than 51 units for Pete's sake. It's understandable. However, you know, that was back in the day whenever you had the meter reader who probably had to knock on your door and come in your house to read a heated meter at that time. And today, everything is done electronically, and they just have a sensor that somehow picks up the exact water consumption in the parking lot. And I don't know electronically how that works exactly, but that's how all meters are read. That's probably how your residential meter is read remotely from right outside your door. So it's just a new world, and you know, there's.
I don't think reading it is what's at question here. It's needing to replace it if and when that happens. I get, you know, I deal with customers all the time at work, and they can't meet during regular business hours.
Well,
you know, I see that potentially being an issue where, hey, I can't be here, can you do it at 7 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever? But then on the other hand, the opposite of that, we shouldn't have to be replacing them that often.
We will have provisions in a lease, of course, that should there be a fire, we can access. Should there be a water main break, or should there be some catastrophic event in unit 23.
So if somebody's contacted that there's, you know, a resident is contacted that there is an issue with the meter and it needs to be replaced, we would be able to give them notice, and if they're not around, somebody there.
We have a building manager.
Would be able to let a city employee in to replace it.
Correct.
I don't know.
When we do these things and we set them up, there's a reason why. We try to make it as convenient for the city to not put any person in the public out of, you know, position or make it invasive. So that's why we have standards to do it. It also allows us to be very efficient at our job of doing these things. What you're asking now, throw away the ordinance, it's now a design standard. So we've been doing this forever for design standards, and we come and meet with people and we talk about design standards and we have our preference. And now, because you didn't do your, last time when we were here, your plumber said they didn't pay attention to our rules. They didn't look at our rules, and because the cost is going to save you money, we should bend what the city likes to do for our preference and our design standards to accommodate you. Now, your plumber works on our PD job. I meet with him every 2 weeks. He does work in the city of Muskego. All he had to do was come and ask us for this thing. If we start changing stuff for design standards, the next person's going to say, I don't like your design standards. I want to change them. I mean, is this what we're going to do, is just not let staff make our recommendations for design standards? No, we're not talking ordinance anymore. We're now talking design standards of it. Is this supposed to be, hey, we don't want to make this easy for ourselves as a city. We should accommodate every developer because they don't like our design standard.
And if this is truly a design standard, should we be the ones discussing it? We don't discuss all design standards here.
Yeah, I agree. The ordinance is great talk for you guys, but now you're talking kind of like our preference in design standards is us doing our job.
Well, that's why I asked if this shouldn't go to plan, because we don't really.
It's changed. Now, I give Bill credit. It's changed in what it was supposed to be. I just want to let you know. He was first asking for a variance from the ordinance. He's now no longer asking for that variance from the ordinance. He's asking for our preference on meters. And I already kind of said, I checked with Scott, do we want this? And we said, no. We gave you another alternative and said, put them in the garage. It's already heated. You don't have to build a separate room. A couple bollards are, you know, they're $300 a piece. Just don't keep anyone in there. It's not like we're against trying not to work with them, but we're trying to find a cheap alternative without costing them too much money.
The only, I'm not real comfortable with having our people access somebody's private residence if they're potentially not going to be there. That could be quite a liability for the city as well.
If you have a building manager there, though, that takes away that liability. I don't know. We're between a rock and a hard place here, I think. I think we have to go with our standards here. Go with what we have written here, and
I understand. It lets your staff do their job. You have standards.
it's
Tough to
probably
deviate from
it's
that.
something that could be reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, sure. It's too bad, but
when do you plan?
but we did our research. We did do the research and found out
Yes.
that it wasn't. That it's a moot point. We will work with you to locate them in the lower level, and I thank you for your time.
All right. Okay. Well, we will have to take some kind of a vote on the fact that we're just not going to, what?
Do we have anything to, we're not doing anything.
I would say we recommend not to defer from the variance.
Okay.
That was the initial request, was a variance from the ordinance.
Okay.
I just,
Yeah, that. Okay,
That's initial
we
one.
have to do that.
Because that's what's on the agenda.
that's what's on the agenda, so.
All in favor of not deferring from the ordinance,
Aye.
Right.
signify by saying aye.
Right.
Aye.
Okay. All righty. On to the new business then of the Muskego Drive and Jewelcrest Drive request for centerline pavement markings. This I had him put on the agenda. I had several people come to me and just ask that if you've driven on Muskego Drive or Jewelcrest Drive, they follow the lake shore. And they're very winding, very twisting. They're up and down. They're all around the place. It's true that they are slow roads, but there's still a sea of asphalt. When you're out there in the dark of the evening and maybe it's raining, it's true that we haven't had many accidents there, but we also have had people say that, gee, there's just people meandering all around the place because there's no marking on the road. And several people came to me and asked if we couldn't please, at least on these twisty, whiny roads, go back to putting a center line in the road. When I originally took this job, I told Scott the other day that I was told that the only reason that people tolerate having a government over them, and this actually goes back to the Declaration of Independence, is that, for safety. And above all, we are to provide a safe environment for people to live in. And something as simple as putting a line down the road to mark the center of it so that you can find the center of it in the dark and in bad weather, or the combination of both, sounded to me like such a simple, small little consideration that I didn't know that it even needed to come here. But Scott thinks that we have to talk about this. Yeah, I know he's recommending that we don't do anything there, but my God, it's like I said, it's just a simple little thing for the safety of people. It's such a little thing. I'm sure we all have one twisty, windy road in our districts that if you asked people, they would tell you it's pretty difficult to navigate without that center line. So I'm not saying that we should go back to center lines on all roads. I'm just asking for on these very, very complicated. That road has 2 speed bumps on it already, And those speed bumps were put in because people were ending up in front yards. So we tried to slow people down. There's a lot of hills, there's a lot of twists, there's a lot of bends on it. And it's just really a complicated, both of those are very complicated roads to navigate. And I'm just asking for a very simple line down the center of the road so that somebody knows where the center of the road is. And it's kind of like, my God.
You know, I drive that road a lot because I have friends that live down there, and I like to sit at Idle Isle and drink my coffee once in a while. So I go down there quite a bit. And my only concern when I read this is often I've had to go around vehicles parked on the side of the road. Very often I have to go around several people walking down the road or jogging down the road. I'd be over that double center line so many times they could be issuing me 20 tickets a day.
But at least you would know you're over it. Right now you don't know you're over it.
But that doesn't stop me, so I don't understand what the line would do.
People should know where the center of the road is. I'm thinking, you know, it's just, I don't know, because I go down that road with my boat as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's no shoulder on neither of those roads. You know, and a lot of times, you know, if there's stuff on the side, yeah, I'd hug the center of the road and I'd probably be over if there was a line. I don't know, you know, looking at the numbers being reported here, I don't think a center line would solve any of those.
It's not really to solve any of those. It's just to let people feel safer when they're coming home in a dark road on
I don't know what the harm is.
Asphalt that
I don't know what the
where
good
it ends,
is.
you don't know where it begins.
Yeah, I don't know what the, you know, where the benefit is either, or the harm on it, of having that there. You know,
I'm not trying
if we're doing something to make people feel good, we should be doing a lot of things. You know, so.
This is safety. It's not feeling good. It's safety.
But the numbers that I see here really, I don't think show that a center line would solve any of those safety issues with the accident data that was provided.
Okay.
What would it cost to do that? Curious. What would the cost be to put a center line down just Muskego Dam Road?
The thing is, the cost is paint that we would have to go look at. We have to maintain it every year and have time for staff to do it.
And it's not budgeted right now.
No, we don't do it on any residential roads. If you're in there with your subdivision, and this is 25 miles an hour, we don't paint double center line roads down any one subdivision. We're trying to make sure we have the staff to minimize and paint them where we really need them. You know, make sure we paint there's so many out there that we have to, in August, have to hit for stop lines and the other lines that we need. This would be just an extra thing that we would have to do to our budget that we would have to maintain over time. Now, talking with, you know, staff and everything like that, it doesn't recommend it from any of our standards. There's not really, from my point of view, talking with the police, that there is a real safety reason to it. It would be just added extra work to us. And next thing I know, I got someone in another district saying, I want double center lines on my road. And that's the fear that I get, is you start opening this can up, next thing you know, we're painting double center lines everywhere on everyone's road. And harsh winters.
I think there's discretion involved in that too, though.
I
say maybe we all have at least one road. I know. You've got probably roads that follow the lake shore too, right? Around Danoon?
I live on Danoon Road, there is no center line. None. People know which side to say that, I guess.
You know, so we probably all have at least one road that, but, yeah. To me, it was such a small request. I think I'm really discouraged with this whole.
It actually isn't a small request when you think about the maintenance that has to take place.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
It really isn't a small request.
Because if you think about the maintenance that takes place over an extended period of time,
Yeah, he talks about maintaining them every year. I have never seen them painted every year.
even every couple of
Never.
years. So, and then, as was mentioned, now I've got roads that have the same particular problem. Are you gonna stripe every road in the city?
No,
I
and
mean, if there were head-on collisions, I could see it
started by
happening,
saying
but there
that-
isn't.
But there's discretion involved in this.
There's always discretion involved, Neil.
Yeah.
But why
And
would
these
that
are
road
two
be better than
particularly-
his road?
Those
You
are
know what I mean?
particularly, well, maybe he's got a road that's even worse.
Well,
And
that's
maybe
what-
it should be striped.
But what I'm saying is everybody is gonna think their road should be the priority.
Well, that's what your job is. And my job.
Exactly. And I just don't see how a double line is gonna help on that road because I drive it often and I know we're always off that road.
You're probably the person that they're complaining about,
Probably.
meandering all around the road.
I am. I'm going around people and cars and puppies and.
Can you stay off that road so I can stop getting complaints?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. I'll take Heinrich right in. I won't go down Muskego Drive.
No, I thought it was a small request, and I think at some point the city should start finding reasons why they should do things, rather than always the reason why we don't do things. I think it's getting really discouraging to say that nothing gets done.
Well, we have to look at increasing our budgets.
Nothing gets done. And to say that it costs money.
It does.
Yeah,
How does
right.
it get done without money?
Yeah, right.
The city doesn't have any. We have to use tax money. We need more.
Okay, I guess what we've decided is that we don't need to vote on it. It's overthrown, it's nasty, it's no good, it'll never come up again. We'll let people drive wherever they want. Are there any other communications or miscellaneous business that's come before this committee? Hearing none, I'll ask for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.